Captain De Yun stood in the observation deck of Sentinel-7, watching the stars with tired eyes. He had been stationed at this remote monitoring outpost for 3 years now, and most days felt exactly the same. Earth's deep space station floated quietly in the void, far from home, recording data that few people ever bothered to read. The galaxy was a big place, and Earth was just a small part of it. His console beeped softly. Another routine scan complete. Nothing unusual. Nothing ever was unusual out here. De Yun sipped his coffee and prepared to file another standard report that would likely sit unread in some database forever. Earth had joined the Galactic Council 150 years ago, but humanity still felt like the new kids in school that nobody wanted to talk to. The other species had civilizations spanning thousands of years. They had technologies that seemed like magic. They had vast empires and ancient histories. Earth had barely left its own solar system when the first alien ship arrived across the galaxy. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council headquarters, Ambassador Jiwoo sat in her designated seat and tried not to feel invisible. The massive circular room held representatives from 300 species, and the current debate had been going on for 6 hours. She was young for an ambassador, only 32, but Earth did not have many options. Most experienced. Diplomats had quit after years of being ignored. The topic today was border disputes between the Vakran Empire and the Helios Coalition. These two powers had divided most of the galaxy between them centuries ago. They had been rivals for so long that younger species like humanity had never known a time when they were not competing. But it had always been a cold competition. Military posturing, economic pressure, political maneuvering. Never open war. The peace had lasted for 300 years. Jiwoo raised her hand to speak. She waited and waited. The session chair, a towering being from the Thalos species, simply looked past her as if she were not there. Finally, after 20 minutes, she stood up. "Excuse me," she said clearly. "Earth would like to offer our services as a neutral mediator in this dispute." A few species turned to look at her. Some seemed amused. The Vakran representative, a muscular creature with 4 arms and deep red skin, actually laughed. It was not a kind sound. The humans wished to mediate. He said, his translator rendering his words in perfect English. "Your species has been among the stars for barely a century. Our empires have navigated these issues since before your ancestors built their first cities. Thank you, but no." The Helios representative, a being that looked like living crystal, did not even bother to respond. She simply turned back to the main debate. Jiwoo sat down, her face burning with embarrassment and frustration. She sent a message back to Earth Command. They needed to be heard. They needed to matter. But she did not know how to make that happen. Back at Sentinel-7, Dayun's console beeped again. This time it was different. His scanners had picked up unusual movement in the border regions between Vakran and Helios space. Fleet movements. Large ones. He leaned forward, running the data through analysis protocols. His eyes widened. "This is Sentinel-7 to Earth Command," he transmitted. "I'm detecting major military buildup along the Vakran-Helios border. Request priority review of these findings." The response came back 3 hours later. "Sentinel-7, your report has been noted. The Council is already aware of standard fleet exercises in that region. Continue normal operations." Daeyeon stared at the message. Fleet exercises. He looked at his data again. These were not exercises. The formations were wrong. The numbers were wrong. He had studied military history extensively during his training. This looked like preparation for war. He filed a second report, marking it urgent. It received the same response. On the planet Helios Prime, deep inside Coalition territory, military coordinators were having very different conversations. Coordinator Thistle stood before a tactical display showing the entire border region. Her crystalline body pulsed with different colors as she processed information. "The Vakran have moved 3 battle groups into forward positions," her aide reported. "They claim it is for training purposes." "They are lying," Thistle said simply. "Increase our alert status." If they want war, we will not be caught unprepared. In the Vakran Imperial Palace, Admiral Bourne was making similar preparations. He had served the Empire for 40 years and had been waiting for this moment. The Helios coalition had grown too strong, too confident. It was time to remind them who truly ruled the galaxy. Our intelligence shows Helios is fortifying their border stations, his officer informed him. They know we are coming, Bourne growled. Good, let them tremble. Neither side wanted to strike first. Neither side wanted to be seen as the aggressor by the Galactic Council. But both were ready. Both were waiting for the other to make a mistake. The mistake came in the form of a navigation error. A Vakran patrol ship, following routine orders, crossed 2 kilometers into heliospace while pursuing a pirate vessel. It was a small violation, the kind that happened occasionally and was usually resolved with an apology and a fine, but these were not usual times. The Helios border station fired warning shots. The Vakran ship, already on high alert, interpreted this as an attack and returned fire. Within minutes, reinforcements from both sides were pouring into the region. Within hours, the first true battle in 300 years had begun. Minho never expected to die in space. He was a civilian engineer traveling on a colony transport ship to his new assignment on the Rim Worlds. The ship was clearly marked as non-military. It was broadcasting all the proper civilian identification codes. It should have been safe. The battle erupted around them without warning. The transport's captain tried to navigate clear, but weapons fire does not care about intentions. A stray missile struck their engine core. Minho had just enough time to think about his family back on Earth before the ship exploded. He was one of 43 humans who died that day. They were not soldiers. They were not involved in the conflict. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. When news reached Earth, people were horrified. When news reached the Galactic Council, there was brief concern followed by the usual political maneuvering. 43 humans were a tragedy, but they were also statistically insignificant in a galaxy of trillions. Ambassador Jiwoo stood before the Council once more. This time she was not asking to be heard. She was demanding it. Earth hereby declares absolute neutrality in this conflict, she announced. We want no part of your war. We ask both sides to respect our sovereignty and keep your battles away from our people. The Vakran representative barely looked up. Noted. The Helios representative said nothing at all. Admiral Haijin, commander of Earth's modest defense fleet, watched the council session from her office on Earth. She had served in the military for 20 years and had a soldier's instinct for danger. She sent out orders immediately. All Earth vessels were to return to home territory. All colonies were to begin emergency preparations. All defensive systems were to be checked and rechecked. Her staff looked at her with confusion. Earth had declared neutrality. Why prepare for war? Because, Haijin said quietly, looking at the star maps showing the spreading conflict. No one ever asked us if we wanted to be neutral. And I do not trust anyone to respect what they did not bother to ask about. In the void of space, at his lonely outpost, Captain Dae-yun watched his sensors as the war spread across 12 star systems in 3 days. He filed report after report, each one ignored or dismissed. He marked the positions of Earth's civilian ships, calculating how long it would take them to reach safety. He wondered if anyone else saw what was coming. The galaxy was burning. And Earth was right in the middle of it all, desperately trying to remain invisible. But Dae-yun had learned something important in his years studying the stars. In a forest fire, the trees that try to hide still burn just as easily as the ones that stand tall. He just hoped someone in command understood that before it was too late. The war grew like a cancer, spreading from system to system with terrifying speed. What started as a border skirmish had become a full conflict within 2 weeks. The Vakran Empire and the Helios Coalition threw their vast fleets at each other with centuries of pent-up hatred finally released. Worlds that had known peace for generations suddenly found themselves under bombardment. Species that had remained carefully neutral for hundreds of years were now being forced to choose sides. Commander Sun Wu guided his ship. the Shadow Runner, through the debris field of what used to be a trading station. His vessel was small, built for stealth and reconnaissance rather than fighting. Earth did not have many ships like this, but the ones they had were very good at not being seen. He recorded everything his sensors detected. Battle formations, weapon signatures, fleet movements. All of it was transmitted back to Earth Command. "This is getting worse," his co-pilot muttered, watching another explosion light up the darkness several thousand kilometers away. "Both sides are throwing everything they have at each other." Sun Wu nodded silently. He had been a military officer for 15 years and had studied every major war in human history. He recognized the signs. This was not a limited conflict. This was total war. And it would not stop until one side was completely defeated or both sides had exhausted themselves completely. On Earth, in a facility hidden beneath the mountains of what used to be called Switzerland, Dr. Yuna checked her calculations for the 100th time. She had been working on the Strategic Defense Initiative for 12 years, ever since graduating top of her class with degrees in physics, engineering, and xenotechnology. The project was classified at the highest levels. Most people on Earth did not even know it existed. "The satellites are ready," she reported to Admiral Haijin via secure communication. "We can activate them at any time." Haijin looked at the data on her screen. Hundreds of satellites positioned around Earth and throughout the Sol system over the past decade. They had been disguised as weather monitors, communication relays, scientific instruments. In reality, they were something very different. "Keep them dormant for now," Haijin ordered. "We show our cards only when we have no other choice." She cut the connection and turned to the window of her office. Looking up at the blue sky of Earth, her home world was beautiful and fragile. 3 billion people lived here, going about their daily lives, most of them completely unaware of the danger growing in the stars above them. She had taken an oath to protect them. She intended to keep that oath, no matter the cost. The Vakran diplomat arrived at Earth with an escort of 3 warships. It was meant to be a show of force, a reminder of who held the real power in the galaxy. Ambassador Jiwoo met him in the council chambers on Earth, a modest building compared to the grand structures of the older species. "The Vakran Empire requires passage through your system," the diplomat stated without any pleasantries. "We need a supply route that bypasses Helios patrol zones. You will grant us access." Jiwoo kept her face neutral. "Earth has declared neutrality. We cannot allow either side to use our territory for military purposes." The diplomat's forearms gestured dismissively. "Your neutrality is irrelevant. You will comply, or you will be considered an enemy of the Empire." Before Jiwoo could respond, her assistant handed her an urgent message. A Helios delegation had just entered Earth's orbit. They were requesting an immediate meeting. The timing could not be a coincidence. The Helios coordinator was more polite than the Vakran diplomat, but the message was the same. They wanted to use Earth's location as a strategic position. The Sol system sat in a region that could provide significant tactical advantages to whoever controlled it. "We must refuse," Jiwoo told them both in separate meetings held only hours apart. "Earth will not be a battlefield for your war." Both delegations left with barely concealed anger. Neither was accustomed to being refused by a species they considered inferior. Admiral Boren received the report about Earth's refusal while planning his next major offensive. He was not pleased. "The humans think they can dictate terms to us?" he growled. "They have been in space for barely a century and they dare to refuse the Vakran Empire?" His officers waited silently. Boren was known for his temper. "We will teach them their place," he decided. "Send 3 warships to Earth. Make them understand that refusing us has consequences. Do not destroy them, not yet. Just frighten them enough to ensure compliance." The orders were transmitted within the hour. 3 Vakran warships, each one capable of destroying a small moon, set course for Earth. Their commanders expected an easy mission. Primitive species always back down when confronted with real military power. It was the way of the galaxy. Commander Sun Wu's Shadow Runner detected the Vakran fleet's movement long before they reached Earth. He transmitted the warning immediately and then followed at a safe distance, his stealth systems keeping him invisible to their sensors. 3 warships headed directly for Earth, he reported. They are not being subtle about it. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Admiral Haijin received the warning and immediately activated Earth's emergency protocols. All civilian stations began evacuation procedures. All defensive forces moved to ready positions. And in her hidden facility, Dr. Yuna prepared to activate systems that had waited 12 years to be used. Are we really going to do this? One of Yuna's assistants asked nervously. Those are Vakran warships. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Yuna smiled slightly. Their technology is old. Very advanced, yes, but old. They have not needed to innovate in a long time because no one has challenged them. We have been studying their systems, their weapons, their weaknesses for 150 years. We know exactly how they think and how they fight. She activated her console, and they have absolutely no idea what we have been building. The Vakran warships entered the Sol system with scanners active, identifying targets. They saw the expected things. 1 inhabited planet. Some orbital stations. A small defensive fleet of maybe 20 ships, all of them outdated designs. Exactly what they expected from a primitive species. The lead commander opened a communication channel. Humans of Earth, you have been given a chance to cooperate with the Vakran Empire. You refused. Now you will learn the cost of that refusal. Surrender your orbital space immediately, or we will take it by force. Admiral Haijin sat in Earth's command center, surrounded by her staff. Every screen showed different angles of the situation. The Vakran ships holding position just outside weapons range. The evacuated civilian stations. The defensive fleet in formation. And the satellites, hundreds of them, still appearing to be nothing more than harmless equipment. She opened a channel to the Vakran commander. Her response was one word, "No?" There was a moment of shocked silence. Then the Vakran commander laughed. "Very well. You have chosen your fate." The 3 warships opened fire on what they believed were primitive defensive satellites. Their targeting systems locked on. Their weapons charged. They expected to see explosions and debris. Instead, they saw their weapons fire being absorbed by energy shields they had not detected. Then they saw the satellites transforming, revealing weapon systems that should not exist on human technology. And then they saw nothing at all because the first Vakran warship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Dr. Yuna's defense grid had activated. 12 years of research, development, and testing came together in 40 seconds of devastating accuracy. The satellites were not just weapons. They were a network system coordinating with each other and with the defensive fleet in ways that the Vakran had never encountered before. The second warship tried to retreat. But Earth's defensive fleet had anticipated that. They had studied Vakran tactics extensively. They knew exactly what the ship would do. Weapons fire crippled its engines before it could jump to faster-than-light speed. The third warship's commander was smarter. He immediately broadcast a surrender signal. Admiral Haijin ordered the weapons to stand down but kept all systems locked on target. "Leave our system," she transmitted. "Now, and tell your Admiral Boran that Earth is not interested in his war, but we are very capable of defending ourselves." The damaged Vakran ships limped away. Behind them, Earth's defensive network remained active, no longer hidden, throughout the galaxy. On every communication channel that the Galactic Council monitored, the battle was being broadcast. Specialist Hajun, Earth's communications officer, had made sure of that. He had intercepted the Vakran transmissions and sent them to every major network, every news service, every diplomatic channel he could find. The galaxy watched in shock as 3 Vakran warships were defeated by humanity in less than 10 minutes. Coordinator Thistle of the Helios Coalition saw the broadcasts. She was not a being prone to emotion, but she felt something close to satisfaction. The Vakran had been humiliated. But then her strategic mind began working. "If the humans can defeat 3 Vakran warships that easily," she said to her military advisors, "then they have technology we did not know about. technology that could be very useful to the Coalition. She made a decision. Send 6 of our warships to Earth, make it clear that we are not there to threaten them, but to secure an alliance. If they refuse, then we will need to ensure that their technology does not fall into Vakran hands. Her advisors understood perfectly. Either Earth would join the Helios Coalition willingly, or they would be forced to join. Either way, this primitive species had just become strategically important on Earth. Civilian Suyun watched the news with everyone else. He was a teacher, not a soldier, but he had studied Earth's history. He knew what happened to small nations caught between great powers. They got crushed, unless they were willing to fight for every centimeter of their sovereignty. He went to the nearest recruitment center and volunteered. He was not alone. Thousands of civilians across Earth were making the same decision. The galaxy had tried to push them around. The galaxy had found out that humans pushed back. Admiral Haijin saw the reports of civilian volunteers and felt pride mixed with concern. Pride because her people were willing to stand together. Concern because she knew what was coming next. The Vakran would not accept this humiliation. The Helios would not ignore Earth's capabilities. And Earth, caught in the middle, would have to fight harder than it had ever fought before. She looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching Helios fleet. 6 warships this time. They would arrive in 8 hours. Prepare all defensive systems, she ordered. And send a message to Dr. Yuna. Tell her we are going to need everything she has. Got. Lieutenant Kyung sat in the cockpit of her fighter, running through pre-flight checks for the 3rd time. She was 26 years old and had been flying for Earth's defense forces for 5 years. In all that time, she had never fired her weapons at an actual enemy. Training exercises, simulations, and patrol runs were all she had ever known. That was about to change. All pilots, this is command. Admiral Haijin's voice came through clearly. Helios Coalition forces have entered the Sol system. 6 warships, battle configuration. They are claiming they want to talk, but they are not behaving like diplomats. All wings are to launch and take defensive positions. Do not fire unless fired upon, but be ready for anything. Kyung took a deep breath and launched her fighter along with 47 others. They formed up in formations that looked standard to outside observers, but had hidden patterns that only Earth's pilots understood. They had studied the recordings of every major space battle in the past 300 years. They had analyzed Helios tactics until they could predict them in their sleep. Now it was time to see if all that preparation meant anything. The 6 Helios warships were beautiful in a cold, crystalline way. They reflected light in prismatic patterns that would have been stunning under different circumstances. Coordinator Thistle commanded the fleet from the lead vessel. She had reviewed the footage of the Vakran defeat multiple times, studying every detail. The humans have better technology than we expected, she told her officers. But technology alone does not win battles. We have experience, discipline, and superior numbers. Open a communication channel. Ambassador Jiwoo received the transmission in the council chambers. She had not slept in 24 hours. The stress of the situation was visible on her face, but her voice remained steady. This is Earth's representative. State your intentions. Thistle's crystalline form appeared on the screen. We witnessed your impressive defense against the Vakran. The Helios Coalition would like to offer you alliance and protection. Join us, and you will have the full support of our military and technology. And if we refuse? Jiwoo asked, though she already knew the answer. Then we cannot allow your advanced technology to be captured by the Vakran Empire, Thistle replied. We will need to take control of your defensive systems for the duration of the war. For your own safety, of course. Jiwoo closed her eyes for a moment. It was the same threat, just wrapped in prettier words than the Vakran had used. She opened her eyes and looked directly at the Helios coordinator. Earth's answer remains the same. We are neutral. We will not join your war. We ask you to respect our sovereignty and leave our system. Thistle's form pulsed with colors that indicated disappointment. That is unfortunate. We really did hope you would be reasonable. The communication ended. On the Helios flagship, Thistle gave her orders. Disable their defensive satellites. Use precision strikes only. We want to capture that technology intact if possible. The 6 warships moved into attack formation. Coordinator Thistle had fought in a dozen campaigns. She had commanded fleets against pirates, rebels, and rogue colonies. In her assessment, this would be a simple operation. The humans had surprised the Vakrin, but the Vakrin were overconfident and sloppy. The Helios coalition was neither. She was about to learn that. Overconfidence came in many forms. Dr. Yuna watched the Helios ships on her displays and smiled grimly. They are being more careful than the Vakrin. See how they are spreading out? They learn from watching that footage. They think they understand what we can do. Her assistant looked nervous. Can we actually stop 6 warships? We stopped 3 Vakrin ships, Yuna replied. But you are right to be concerned. The Helios are better tacticians. This will not be as easy. She activated different systems, ones that had not been revealed in the previous battle. Good thing we have more surprises ready. The Helios warships opened fire with precise, coordinated strikes aimed at what they believed were the most important defensive satellites. Their targeting was excellent, their coordination perfect. They should have disabled a significant portion of Earth's defenses in the opening salvo. Instead, their weapons fire was redirected by gravitational fields they had not detected. The satellites they had targeted were decoys. The real weapons platforms activated from completely different positions. Admiral Hajin had deployed her defensive fleet in what appeared to be a standard formation. In reality, each ship was positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that could be adjusted instantly based on enemy movement. She had spent years developing these tactics, gaming out scenarios, preparing for threats that everyone told her would never come. All ships, execute pattern Delta 7. She ordered calmly. The defensive fleet shifted in ways that made no tactical sense according to standard military doctrine. Ships that should have been protecting each other suddenly separated. Ships that should have been engaging the enemy pulled back. To Coordinator Thistle, watching from her flagship, it looked like the humans were panicking. She was wrong, Lieutenant. Kyung and her fellow pilots had been waiting for this moment. As the Helios ships focused on what they thought was a confused defensive fleet, the fighters struck from unexpected angles. They used the debris field from evacuated stations as cover, emerging at high speed to deliver precision strikes. Against shield generators and weapon systems, Helios targeting systems tried to lock onto the fighters, but the humans were flying in patterns that violated every rule of conventional space combat. They used their smaller size and superior maneuverability to stay inside the targeting solutions of the larger ships. It was reckless and dangerous and should have resulted in massive casualties. Instead, it worked perfectly. They are using their weakness as a strength, Thistle realized with growing alarm. Their ships are smaller and more fragile, so they are staying close where our heavy weapons cannot track fast enough. Clever. But clever was not enough to change the outcome of a battle, or so she thought. The first Helios warship lost shields under the combined assault of Earth's fighters and defensive platforms. The second ship tried to adjust its formation to provide better coverage but moved directly into the firing solution of 3 defensive platforms that had been waiting for exactly that maneuver. Its engines were disabled in seconds. Specialist Hajun was broadcasting everything once again. Every major communication network in the galaxy was receiving live footage of the battle. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds watched as 6 Helios warships struggled against a species that had been traveling in space for barely a century on the Helios flagship. Coordinator Thistle made a decision. Pride was a luxury she could not afford. All ships, full retreat. Maximum emergency power. But Admiral Haijing had anticipated that as well. Earth's defensive network had been slowly repositioning during the entire battle, cutting off the most obvious escape routes. The Helios ships found themselves hemmed in by weapons platforms that should not have been able to move so quickly or coordinate so effectively. Suyun watched from a civilian volunteer center where he and thousands of others had been training for ground defense. The battle was being shown on every screen. He saw the Helios ships trying to escape. He saw Earth's forces methodically destroying or disabling every single one. "We are actually winning," someone whispered in disbelief. "Of course we are winning," an older volunteer replied. She was a veteran of Earth's early space exploration days. "Did you think we spent 150 years out here just watching? We have been learning, studying, preparing. Every fight the Vakran and Helios ever had, we analyzed it. Every weapon system they deployed, we figured out how to counter it. They thought we were primitive and not worth their attention. That was their first mistake." The battle lasted 8 minutes from first shot to final surrender. All 6 Helios warships were disabled or destroyed. Not a single Earth vessel was lost. Though several fighters had taken damage and 3 pilots were injured, Coordinator Thistle sat in her command chair, staring at the destruction of her fleet in numb shock. She had been a military commander for 80 years. She had never been defeated so completely, so quickly. "Send a message to the humans," she said quietly. "We surrender. We will leave their system immediately if they allow us to recover our survivors." Admiral Hyjin granted the request. She was not interested in unnecessary killing. Earth's goal was not conquest or vengeance. It was simply to be left alone. As the battered remnants of the Helios fleet limped away, Hyjin allowed herself a moment of relief. 2 major powers had now attacked Earth. 2 major powers had been defeated. Perhaps now the message would be clear. Earth was neutral, and Earth would remain neutral. Regardless of who tried to force them into the war, Lieutenant Kyung returned to the carrier, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. She had fired her weapons in combat for the first time. She had helped defeat an enemy that everyone said was superior to humanity in every way. As she climbed out of her cockpit, the other pilots surrounded her, celebrating their victory, but the celebration was short-lived. Specialist Hyjin's voice came over the communication system, broadcasting to the entire fleet. "Command has received multiple transmissions from Galactic Council species. Everyone is demanding to know what happened here. The Vakran Empire has issued a formal protest. The Helios Coalition is requesting an emergency council session." He paused. "And both of them are blaming each other for Earth's involvement in the war." Admiral Hyjin closed her eyes. They had won 2 battles, but the war was far from over. In fact, it might have just gotten much worse across the galaxy. In government chambers and military headquarters, the same conversation was happening. How had the humans defeated both Vakran and Helios forces so easily? What technology did they possess? And most importantly, could that technology turn the tide of the war if one side managed to acquire it? Admiral Boran of the Vakran Empire met secretly with Coordinator Thistle. They were enemies, but they were also both professional military leaders. And they both understood that they had a much bigger problem than their war with each other. "The humans are more advanced than we realized," Boran admitted, something that cost him considerable pride. "Agreed," Thistle replied. "And they are in a strategically important location. If they continue to remain neutral and powerful, they become a wild card that neither of us can control." Boran nodded slowly. "What are you proposing?" "A temporary alliance," Thistle said. "We suspend our conflict long enough to deal with Earth. Once they are brought under control, we can return to our war." It was unprecedented. The Vakran and Helios had been enemies for centuries, but both of them feared the unknown more than they hated each other. And Earth had just become a very dangerous unknown. They began planning their joint strike. Not 3 ships? Not 6 ships? This time, they would send enough force that the humans would have no choice but to surrender. They would send 47 warships. And they would make sure the entire galaxy understood what happened to species that tried to stand against the established powers. Chancellor Vryn had led the Galactic Council for 300 years. In all that time, through countless conflicts and crises, he had never felt genuine fear. Concern, yes. Worry, certainly. But not fear. Not until now, he watched the recordings of Earth's battles for the 20th time. The tactical analysis kept returning the same impossible conclusions. A species that should have been centuries behind everyone else had just defeated the two most powerful military forces in the galaxy. And they had made it look easy. How did we miss this? He asked his advisors. We have had observers on Earth for 150 years. How did we not know they had this level of technology? His chief intelligence officer, a being from a species known for their analytical abilities, could only shake his head. They hit it perfectly. Every piece of technology they showed us was carefully selected to appear primitive but functional. Every military exercise they conducted was designed to look adequate but unremarkable. They have been deliberately making themselves seem less advanced than they actually are. Vryn felt a chill run through his ancient body. They have been planning this. From the moment they joined the council, they have been preparing for the day when someone would try to push them around. It appears so. The intelligence officer confirmed the emergency council session was chaos. 300 species all trying to speak at once, all demanding answers, all accusing each other of various failures. The Vakran delegation was furious, demanding that Earth be sanctioned for attacking their ships. The Helios delegation was equally angry. Making the same accusations, Ambassador Jiwoo sat quietly in her seat, waiting for a chance to speak. Finally, Chancellor Vryn called for order and recognized her. Earth attacked no one, she said clearly, her voice cutting through the noise. We were attacked twice. We defended ourselves twice. We have full recordings of both incidents showing that we fired only after being fired upon. We claim self-defense under Article 12 of the Galactic Charter. Self-defense does not explain your advanced technology, the Vakran ambassador shouted. You have been developing weapons in secret in violation of treaty regulations. Jiwoo pulled up a document on the chamber's main screen. Treaty 77 Alpha requires all species to report military developments that exceed current council standards by more than 50%. Our technology does not exceed council standards. It is different, yes, but not more advanced than what the Vakran or Helios already possess. We simply use it more effectively. It was a carefully worded truth. Earth's individual technologies were not necessarily better than what other species had. But the way they were integrated, the tactics they employed, the strategic thinking behind their deployment, that was where humanity had its real advantage, the Helios ambassador stood. Regardless of technical violations, Earth has destabilized the balance of power. This cannot be allowed to continue. Chancellor Vryn recognized the threat in those words. He had seen this pattern before. When an established power felt threatened by a rising one, war often followed. He needed to stop this before it spiraled completely out of control. This council will take no action against Earth at this time, he declared, using his authority as chancellor. They acted in legitimate self-defense. However, I am ordering a full review of their military capabilities to ensure compliance with all relevant treaties. It was a compromise that satisfied no one, which meant it was probably the best solution available on Earth. In a secure intelligence facility, Taiwan reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. He had been analyzing galactic communications for 7 years and had become very good at reading between the lines. They are planning something big, he told Admiral Haijin during a secure briefing. The Vakran and Helios have been enemies for centuries, but our analysis shows they are now in communication with each other. Secret channels, encrypted beyond normal levels. Haijin studied the data. You think they are going to work together? I think we scared them badly enough that they are willing to put aside their war to deal with us first, Taiwan replied. The question is what form that will take. The answer came 3 days later. Long-range scanners detected a massive fleet forming in neutral space between Vakran and Helios territory. Ships from both powers, gathering together in numbers that suggested something far beyond another small punitive strike. Dr. Yuna ran the calculations and her face went pale. 47 warships. That is more firepower than has been assembled in one place in the past 100 years. Admiral Haijin looked at the projections showing the fleet's most likely course. It pointed directly at Earth. She had known this might happen. She had prepared for it. But seeing it actually occur was different from theoretical planning. Can we stop them? One of her officers asked quietly. Hyjin did not answer immediately. She called up Earth's complete defensive inventory on her private screen. Every satellite, every ship, every weapon platform. All the systems that Dr. Yuna had spent years developing. All the tactics she had created. All the preparation humanity had made. Yes, she said finally. But it will cost us everything we have been hiding. After this, the galaxy will know exactly what we are capable of. There will be no more secrets. Is that a bad thing? The officer asked. Hyjin smiled slightly. That depends on whether they learn the right lesson. Nari was a journalist who had been covering Earth's story since the first alien ship arrived 150 years ago. She had watched humanity go from excited newcomers to increasingly isolated outsiders in the galactic community. Now she was watching something entirely different. She broadcast from Earth's surface, showing the preparations happening worldwide. Not panic. Not fear. Just calm, determined readiness. Citizens volunteering for civil defense. Engineers working double shifts to maintain defensive systems. Families gathering together not in terror but in quiet strength. The galaxy sees us as primitive, Nari said to her camera, knowing her broadcast was being received across hundreds of worlds. They see our short history in space and assume we are children playing at being a civilization? But they forget that we have a very long history on our own world. We know what war is. We know what it costs. And we know that sometimes the only way to have peace is to be strong enough that no one dares to take it from you. Her broadcasts were watched by billions. Other species saw something in humanity that they had not expected. Not bravado or aggression, but something deeper. A people who had looked at the vast, dangerous galaxy and decided they would carve out their own space in it. Regardless of what the older powers thought, Chancellor Vryn watched Nari's broadcasts and felt his fear growing. He had seen many wars in his long life. He knew how they started. Pride, miscalculation, the belief that military force could solve political problems. Earth and the allied Vakran Helios fleet were on a collision course that would end in catastrophe for someone. He sent a private message to Ambassador Jiwoo. Please, reconsider your position. Accept protection from the Council. We can mediate this situation, but only if you are willing to compromise. Jiwoo replied quickly. We have compromised, Chancellor. We stayed out of their war. We declared neutrality. We harmed no one who did not attack us first. We will not compromise on our sovereignty. That is not a position. That is a principle. The combined fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system exactly when Taiwan's intelligence predicted they would. Admiral Boren commanded the Vakran forces. Coordinator Thistle commanded the Helios forces. They had put aside centuries of hatred to work. Together for one purpose, Admiral Hyjin stood in Earth's command center, surrounded by her staff. Every screen showed a different aspect of the incoming threat. It was the largest military force Earth had ever faced. By all conventional military analysis, it should have been unstoppable. Open a channel, she ordered. Her face appeared on screens across 47 warships. Thousands of alien warriors saw a human woman, looking calm and composed despite facing overwhelming odds. This is Admiral Hyjin of Earth Defense Command. You have entered our system with obvious hostile intent. I am giving you one chance, and only one chance. Turn around. Leave now. This is your only warning. On his flagship, Admiral Boren laughed. The human thinks she can order us around. How amusing. He opened a return channel. You are outnumbered nearly 50-1. You have no chance of victory. Surrender your defensive systems immediately, and we will allow your population to live under joint Vakran Helios administration. Hyjin's expression did not change. You have had your warning. You chose to ignore it. Remember that. She cut the channel and turned to Dr. Yuna. Activate everything? Show them what humanity has really built. Throughout the Sol system, defense platforms came online. Not the hundreds that the Vakran and Helios had seen in previous battles. Thousands hidden in asteroid fields. disguised as space debris built into the surfaces of moons, all coming active simultaneously. The combined fleet's sensors were suddenly overwhelmed with targeting data. Their tactical officers tried to process the information and could not believe what they were seeing. "Impossible," Coordinator Thistle whispered. "They could not have built this many platforms without us knowing." "They did it very slowly," Taiwan explained to Admiral Haijin, watching the enemy fleet's confusion. "A few platforms at a time over 150 years? Each one disguised as something harmless. By the time anyone thought to look closely, we had an entire defensive network in place." Admiral Boren recovered from his shock quickly. "All ships, attack formation. We will destroy these platforms and then deal with the planet itself." The combined fleet opened fire with devastating force. Enough weapons to level a continent struck at Earth's defensive network. For a moment, it seemed like nothing could withstand such an assault. Then Earth's defenses returned fire. Dr. Yuna had spent 12 years developing integrated defensive systems. But she had spent the 8 years before that studying every battle the Vakran and Helios had ever fought. She knew their tactics better than they did. She knew their weapons, their shields, their standard formations. She had designed Earth's defenses specifically to counter everything they could do. The battle was not like the previous skirmishes. This was total war. 47 warships against an entire defensive network. Ships exploded. Platforms were destroyed. Both sides took casualties. The space around Earth lit up with weapons fire like a deadly fireworks display. Lieutenant Kyung led her fighter wing into the chaos. They had practiced for this scenario 1,000 times in simulations. Now it was real, and it was terrifying. Ships the size of cities were dying around her. But she kept flying, kept fighting, because that was what Earth needed. The battle raged for hours. The combined fleet's superior numbers should have made the difference. In any conventional engagement, they would have won through simple attrition. But this was not a conventional engagement. Earth's defensive network adapted in real time. Platforms destroyed were automatically compensated for by others repositioning. The defensive fleet used tactics that no military academy had ever taught because they were based on human psychology, human intuition, human stubbornness. Slowly, impossibly, the balance began to shift. 10 enemy ships destroyed, then 20, then 30. Each loss made the combined fleet's coordination worse. They had trained to fight each other, not to fight together against a common enemy. Admiral Boren watched his fleet being systematically destroyed and felt something he had not experienced in 40 years of military service. He felt helpless. "Retreat," he ordered. "All remaining ships, full retreat." Only 4 ships escaped. 43 of the finest warships in the galaxy now floated as debris around Earth. The species that was supposed to be primitive had just shattered the combined might of the 2 greatest powers in known space. In the Galactic Council chambers, Chancellor Vryn watched the battle's conclusion with absolute horror. This changed everything. The balance of power that had maintained peace for centuries was broken, and the species responsible for breaking it had done so simply by refusing to be bullied. He knew what he had to do. It went against everything the Council stood for, everything the established powers believed. But he had no choice. He sent an urgent message requesting Earth's presence at an emergency session. This time, they would not ignore Ambassador Jiwoo. This time, they would listen. Because now, finally, they were afraid. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 3,000-year history. Every species sent their highest-ranking representatives. The chamber, which usually echoed with political posturing and diplomatic games, was silent as Ambassador Jiwoo walked to the speaker's platform. She was still young. Still the same person who had been ignored and dismissed for years. But everything had changed. Now, when she looked at the assembled representatives, she saw fear in their eyes. Fear of Earth, fear of what humanity represented, fear of the unknown. Chancellor Vryn spoke first, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber. Ambassador Jiwoo, Earth has demonstrated military capabilities that were previously unknown to this council. In doing so, you have fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. We must discuss what this means for all of us. Jiwoo took a breath. She had prepared for this moment, but standing here with the eyes of 300 species upon her was still overwhelming. Earth has hidden nothing that we were required to reveal. We have violated no treaties. We have attacked no one who did not attack us first. We have simply defended ourselves. By destroying 43 warships, the Vakran representative shouted. His species had suffered massive losses, and the political consequences back home were severe. Warships that came to our home with the intention of forcing us into subjugation, Jiwoo replied calmly. What would you have done in our position? Surrendered our sovereignty because someone bigger than us demanded it? Is that what this council stands for? The question hung in the air. Many species in the chamber had been forced into similar positions over the centuries. Most had chosen to submit to the stronger powers rather than fight. Earth had chosen differently. Chancellor Vryn raised his hand for silence. We are not here to assign blame. We are here to determine the path forward. Earth has proven itself capable of defending its territory. The question is what Earth intends to do with this capability. Before Jiwoo could answer, President Dongyun's face appeared on every screen in the chamber. It was unprecedented for a planetary leader to address the council directly, but Earth had earned the right to break protocol. I am President Dongyun of Earth, he said in a quiet but firm voice. I want to make our position absolutely clear so there can be no misunderstanding. Earth does not seek territory. We do not want to join your war. We do not want to conquer or control anyone. We want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. Is that really so difficult to understand? He paused, looking directly into the camera. For 150 years, we have been part of this council. In that time, we have contributed our knowledge, our culture, our resources. We have asked for nothing except to be treated with basic respect. We have been dismissed, ignored, and treated as if we were children playing at being a civilization. We tolerated this because we believed in the ideals this council claims to represent. His expression hardened. Then your war came to our doorstep. We declared neutrality. We were ignored. We were attacked. We defended ourselves. And now you fear us because we refuse to be victims. That fear is your problem, not ours. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species were outraged. Others were thoughtful. A few looked ashamed. President Dongyun continued speaking over the chaos. Earth is making this offer once, and only once. We will maintain our neutrality. We will not attack anyone who does not attack us. We will not interfere in your war. In exchange, you will recognize our absolute sovereignty over the Sol system and any human colonies. You will not send military forces into our territory. You will not demand that we choose sides. You will leave us alone. And if we refuse? Coordinator Thistle asked. Her forces had been shattered, but she still had pride. Dongyun's smile was not pleasant. Then you can try to force us again. I think we both know how that will end. The session dissolved into arguments that lasted for hours. But underneath all the political maneuvering, everyone understood the reality. Earth had demonstrated that it could defend itself against the combined might of the galaxy's two strongest powers. Any further attempts to subjugate humanity would result in even more catastrophic losses. While the politicians argued, the military leaders of both empires were having their own discussions. Commander Sunwoo's stealth ship had been monitoring their communications. What he discovered was both concerning and oddly reassuring. They are fortifying their borders, he reported to Admiral Haijin, but not against each other. They are positioning their remaining forces to prevent any potential human expansion. Haijin studied the tactical maps. The Vakran and Helios were still at war with each other, but both had pulled significant forces back to create defensive perimeters around their territories closest to human space. They are more afraid of us than they are of each other, she observed. That could be dangerous. Or it could be exactly what we need, Dr. Yuna suggested. Fear can lead to aggression, yes, but it can also lead to respect and caution. They attacked us when they thought we were weak. Now that they know we are strong, they might actually listen when we say we want to be left alone. On the colony world where Young-Ho had lived before the transport ship was destroyed, a memorial service was being held for those who had died in that first attack. 43 names were read aloud, including his family members. The survivors stood in silence, remembering Young-Ho had survived only because he had been reassigned to a different ship at the last minute. The guilt of living when his family had died haunted him. But as he stood at the memorial, listening to the names, he felt something shift inside him. His family had not died in vain. Their deaths had been the catalyst that led Earth to finally show its strength. Because of them, because of the 43, Earth would never again be dismissed or ignored. Future generations of humans would travel the stars knowing that their species commanded respect. It was a cold comfort. But it was something back at the Galactic Council. Chancellor Vryn made a decision that he knew would define his legacy. He stood before the chamber and called for absolute silence. I have consulted with the Council's legal experts, military advisors, and diplomatic corps, he announced. Earth's actions, while devastating to the Vakran and Helios forces, were entirely within their rights under the Galactic Charter. They acted in self-defense against unprovoked aggression. The Vakran and Helios representatives tried to protest, but Vryn continued over them. Furthermore, I am issuing a formal statement on behalf of this council. Earth has demonstrated both the capability and the willingness to defend its sovereignty. Any species that attacks Earth will receive no support from this council and will face the consequences alone. He paused and then did something that shocked everyone. He turned to face Ambassador Jiwo directly. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize. We should have listened to you. We should have respected your neutrality. We should have protected you as we are sworn to protect all members. We failed in our duty. I beg you, do not let our failures push you to actions you might regret. Leave Earth out of this war. Take no sides. Seek no vengeance, please. The chamber was absolutely silent. In 3,000 years, no chancellor had ever formally apologized to a member species. Jiwo felt tears threatening to form. She had fought so hard to be heard, to be respected. Now, finally, they understood. But the cost had been terrible. Earth accepts the Council's apology, she said quietly, and we accept your request. We never wanted to be part of this war. All we have ever wanted is to live in peace and pursue our own destiny among the stars. The formal treaties were drawn up over the next week. Earth's sovereignty was recognized in absolute terms. The Sol system was declared off-limits to all military traffic. Human colonies were granted the same protections as any other species. Territories. Ambassador Yunji arrived to take over some of Jiwo's duties. She was older, more experienced in the specific type of diplomacy that would be needed now. Her job was not to beg for attention, but to carefully manage Earth's new position of strength. Do not think this is over, she told Jiwo privately. Fear is powerful, but it fades. Eventually, someone will test us again. Then we will be ready, Jiwo replied. We always have been. The Vakran-Helios war continued, but it was a different war now. Both sides fought with more caution, more awareness of the cost of conflict. And both sides carefully avoided any actions that might bring Earth into the fight. Small species that had been forced to choose sides suddenly found they had a third option. They could not match Earth's military power, but they could follow Earth's example of principled neutrality. Some of them succeeded. Others were crushed by the major powers. But the idea had been planted. Dr. Yuna began the process of deactivating some of Earth's more aggressive defensive systems. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough to show good faith. Admiral Haijin kept the majority operational, though. Trust, she believed, had to be earned through years of peaceful coexistence. Not assumed because of treaties, Lieutenant Kyung returned to regular patrol duties, though her fighter wing was now recognized as the most elite unit in Earth's military. She flew the same routes she had flown before the war, but the galaxy felt different now. Before, she had flown through space that belonged to others, where humans were tolerated guests. Now she flew through space that she and her comrades had defended. It belonged to humanity as much as anyone. Back at Sentinel-7, Captain Daeyeon watched his sensors with the same careful attention he always had. But now, when he filed his reports, people read them. When he flagged potential threats, Earth Command responded immediately. His lonely outpost was no longer forgotten. It was the first line of defense for a species that had proven it would not be pushed around. One day, he received a message from a survey team from a species he had never heard of. They were small, barely 100 systems to their name, trying to maintain neutrality in a galaxy at war. Sentinel-7, we detected some unusual readings in this sector. Can you confirm what we are seeing? We trust your analysis more than our own limited equipment. Daeyeon smiled. They trusted Earth's judgment. They valued humanity's expertise. He sent back a detailed analysis, helping them avoid a potential hazard. This, he thought, was what Earth had really won. Not military dominance. Not fear, but respect. The galaxy now knew that humanity had something valuable to offer: knowledge, skill, the courage to stand by principles. Even when it cost dearly, trade ships began arriving at Earth with increasing frequency. Not military vessels. Not conquest fleets. Merchants, scientists, cultural ambassadors. Species that wanted to learn from humanity, to partner with them, to understand what made them different. Nari continued her broadcasts, showing the galaxy what life was like on Earth now. Not triumphant warriors celebrating victory. Just people going about their lives, building, creating, learning, living. We did not ask to become important, she told her billions of viewers across the stars. We just refused to become victims. And somehow that changed everything. On the colony world where the memorial stood for the 43 who had died in that first attack, Young-ho placed flowers at the monument. Others joined him. It had become a tradition. A reminder of the cost of freedom and the price of peace. The names carved in stone would never be forgotten. And because of them, Earth would never again be dismissed as primitive or insignificant. They had died as casualties of a war Earth wanted no part of. But their deaths had led to a galaxy where humanity finally commanded the respect it deserved. The war between Vakran and Helios would eventually end, though it would take years. But whatever the outcome, both sides knew they would face a galaxy where Earth existed as a power that could not be ignored or bullied. A species that had proven that strength came not from ancient heritage or vast territory, but from the courage to defend your principles no matter the odds. And in the Sol system, Admiral Hyjin looked up at the stars and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Her people were safe. Her world was secure. The galaxy had learned to leave Earth out of wars it did not start. She had done her duty. And she would continue to do it for as long as humanity needed guardians to stand watch over their hard-won peace.